Message you want to get across is that you believe and others in your family believe your mother's innocent.
Yes.
Tell us some of the specifics about how she got charged with this crime.
She was convicted on circumstantial evidence and motive. There was no eyewitnesses, there was no forensic evidence linking her to the murder. She had taken off work due to illness that day, and she was at my grandmother's house the time of the murder.
And your grandmother wasn't an adequate alibi, or was that looked into?
That was looked into, but my grandmother was charged with perjury also.
Oh dear, no one believed her.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, it was very difficult.
Well, and then you had the KBI. You were telling me that in 1992, again, when you were 7 years old and this happened to your father, the KBI came to your mother's house and told her she was a suspect. Now, the two of them were not living together, that's correct?
Yes.
Right, so they were estranged, or what was their relationship like at the time?
They only communicated on visiting, when I would go to visit at his house on the weekends and that kind of thing.
And you're the only child of the two of them?
Yes.
And they were, like you had said, never officially married?
Right.
Right, and he lived actually at that time in Junction City. And this happened in a rural area near Junction City?
Yes.
The actual murder itself? And what did they determine? How did that happen? Was he driving down a road, and what did they think happened?
He was out for a jog on a dirt road near his home, and it was shown that he was killed with a shotgun, and there was a footprint by the body, there was tire tracks. None of those matched my mom's or any vehicle in my family, or her vehicle for that matter. So
like someone just drove up, obviously, and they knew it was a shotgun, and just shot him there, jogging down a rural road.
Yes.
And but to your knowledge, your mother didn't even own a shotgun, or she
No.
didn't have the same tire tracks, and there were footprints at the area. So it makes me wonder, what was the circumstance? No DNA, no forensic evidence. What was even the circumstantial evidence, if you remember, that sent her away for all these years?
Just the fact that she took off work that day.
Boy, next time I call into work, I'll second think that.
Yeah, definitely. And
especially if you just had a fight with your boyfriend or husband.
Yeah, and she was, at the time, my biological father was under investigation for molesting me.
Oh dear.
And so they said, that was maybe part of the motive that she would have had, but they couldn't prove that she pulled the trigger. So, because the kickback of the shotgun would have caused bruising, and she was examined by a doctor, and there was no bruising, so that they linked my uncle into the murder also and gave him the same charges, but there was once again, no eyewitnesses, no evidence.
So it sounds kind of thready to me, in that the only thing they were leaning on was the fact that, was she the one who had actually reported the molestation and he was under investigation?
Yes.
Because let me say, you were 7 years old and you had told your mother
Yes.
about it. And how long had that investigation, I assume with SRS, been going on?
I would say anywhere from 6 months to a year. Okay. But the molestation had been going on for quite some time.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
How long had you been away from it at the time you told your mother? Were you safe at the time this happened, or had you been away from him?
I was away from him, yeah.
Or because at that time, if she didn't know this was going on, she wouldn't even know to have supervised visits or...
Right, and I think just being too young, I wasn't able to, differentiate the, difference between good and bad and that kind of thing.
Well, and I wouldn't ask you this, Ashley, but you told me again in our pre-interview you were comfortable enough to talk about this. How old were you when the molestation started with your father?
I was 2 years old,
Mm-hmm.
around 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine that. And you said he also wasn't exactly the best father because he
encouraged, actually, more than just offered beer and hard liquor. He would encourage me to drink that. And
he probably hated the taste.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
I mean, I remember as a teenager trying it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want, who drinks this? And he encouraged you to do it. And do you remember drinking it?
Yeah,
and not liking it and getting funny feeling and all of that?
And looking back now, I'm able to kind of process and think maybe he was doing that to kind of cover up help sort of cause me to forget, you know, what he was doing maybe.
Oh, yeah, get you a bit intoxicated so you wouldn't remember the molestation. But at some point, you came forward.
Right. And one point, I remember him saying, if you tell anyone about this, you'll never see your mother again.
Well, and that's usually what they do, is they put some sort of threat out there that, you know, you obviously loved your mother. You were telling me about, you know, the relationship you have always had with her.
Yes.
Before this situation with her going to prison and all of that. But that's a pretty frightful thing for a little girl to hear from an adult that, you know, could probably make that happen.
Right.
Because even then, they were not together. You were visiting him, or were they living together at the time some of this molestation started?
No, they were never living together.
They never were.
They separated before I was born.
So it was always on visitation to him that sort of happened. And that's just a whole nother story all in itself to talk about, which is very difficult for me to even hear. I'm very sorry that happened. But I think what we wanted to, I know what you wanted to focus on again was your mother's innocence. And tell us again, I know that through the course of the trial, this sounded like some pretty sketchy circumstantial evidence, again, telling your and your mother's side of it, that put her away. But tell me about, she had the option, you said, for a plea bargain.
Yes, she was offered a plea bargain by the prosecution for if she would admit to the murder, she would get second-degree murder charges and only serve a flat 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, her feeling, you know, not wanting to admit to it because she was innocent, in fact, she took the full sentence. And she's now served like 14 and a half years, so.
Well, and that just makes me stop and think, what would we do? I mean, if you knew you were innocent and, you know, would you confess to something, just a roll of the dice that I can for sure be out in 10? She wasn't going to confess because she was saying, I did not do this, I am innocent of this. And then she got given as much as life imprisonment. When is her next parole coming up? She's been 14 and a half years. When is the next parole
I believe
hearing?
2016.
Oh my goodness, so you've got another good 5 years
Yeah.
more here, wow. And when was the last? How many years do they span?
This will be the first, actually.
This is her
Yes.
first, so she's gonna have to be in about almost 20 years.
Yeah.
19, 20 years before she's even up for parole.
Yes.
Right. And what do you feel the odds are with that?
From what I've heard, they're not very good, especially in murder charges and stuff. They usually pass you on your first time. That's what I've
Exactly. That's what I've kind of heard too. That's heartbreaking as well. You know, we're looking again at a situation where, you know, I know your side of the story is they're innocent and the court's found otherwise, and then her brother's on the same exact charges?
Yes.
And not up for parole for another 5 years or so
Right.
as well.
Mhm.
And does he maintain his innocence
Yes.
also?
Yes.
I just don't, how did he get brought into it? What was his motive supposed to be?
I honestly, I don't know. It's like you said, it's all very sketchy, very thready. Just the fact that they couldn't prove that she pulled the trigger, and they needed another person in there.
Another fall guy, so to
Yeah.
speak. Now, here's another very interesting part of your story that I wanted to really bring you on. There was a confession after your mother, or tell me about the confession and when it happened in the course of your mother's trial and sentencing.
Yes. Well, of course, all this was in the newspapers, and a gentleman had read it in the newspapers that she and her brother were being convicted on these murder charges. He had been told by two brothers that they had actually shot my dad, and had committed the murder and that kind of thing. They claimed it was a drug deal gone bad. Well, so he, seeing that she was being convicted, contacted her attorney and told him that he knew who did it. And at that point, it was just, they had spent so much, the state had spent so much money on the trial and everything that they just didn't go through with any of it.
Was that their explanation for not following through with this so-called confession?
More or
Even though
less.
it was, you know, secondhand. So, and no one took a closer look at that, or those two suspects?
No, I think you can kind of read between the lines and draw that conclusion because, you know, it was dismissed by the KBI and the prosecution, you know, this evidence.
So what can you do to advocate for your mother?
Writing your congressman, writing the governor, Sam Brownback, Mike O'Neill, any of those, anything will help.
Have you tried doing that yourself? What have you
Yes.
and your family tried to do, and where has it gone for you?
Yes, we are actually in the process of doing that now, and we've tried it with previous governors, and haven't gotten anywhere so far, but definitely still trying and working towards it.
So is this like a grassroots effort that you yourself are doing? Do you have help? Do you have other family members helping out?
Yeah, it's mainly me at this point. So.
Wow, a lonely journey for that. But now you do have a stepfather in your life, is
Yes,
that correct?
yes.
And was your mother married after she was in jail, or was this after her sentencing?
No, actually, I call him Dad because he's a dad to me, even though he's not my biological father. He was actually the pastor of my mom's church, and he's been like a real father to me, and I wouldn't trade him for the world. So
Now, again, when were they together?
they were never together.
Okay.
They're just he's just a very good support.
Oh, I see. So they're not
person.
officially married,
No.
but he's your dad.
Yeah, he's
Of
definitely
course.
my dad.
Because that's what it is. It's not all about some legal piece of paper or something like that, and it's not even about biology at some point.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot to be said about that. Well, I think we've got a lot of information, a lot of good things to continue talking with Ashley about, but we're going to go into a break. This is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show. Don't forget to catch the video outtakes, podcasts, and links that we have to iTunes and my blogs on joanjerkovich.com. So we'll be right back here on 910 KINA Salina. Remember to cue me with your fingers?
I did.
You have to put it right here. I
Oh.
don't see it, Paul, because I'm trying to watch my notes too.
Sorry.
No problem. It went just a tiny bit short there. I think you got a lot of good information out on that.
Yeah.
I do.
too.
See what I mean? It seems to go fast, but we really hit,
We really did, yeah.
the
That's
her
great.
innocence, the sketchy things. I just don't understand how, these guys come up and say, and that's always how these criminals get caught. I was talking to a police officer one time, and he said, if you want to commit a crime and you want to get away with it, don't ever tell anybody you did it. And too many of them don't think about that. They just start spouting off, probably at a bar. Was that at a bar?
It was at a bar.
Was
yeah.
at a bar. They've been drinking.
Yeah, it was the two guys. The guy that overheard these guys
Mhm.
was the one that reported it.
Exactly. Well, if he was kind of a good guy, and let's assume he was sort of a good guy because he reported it,
Right.
he was probably sitting there going, oh my gosh,
Right.
these two guys are admitting to something and two innocent people are being put in jail. And how does that not get the notice of the KBI? How does that not, what about, calling one of those TV shows to pick up your case?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah.
Are there any of those out there that might take a look at it?
I don't know. I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
there is.
but you're all by yourself trying to do it, and
my stepdad is helping where he
Mhm.
can, but
Mhm.
it is difficult.
Mhm.
So.
right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get back to the interview whenever our board operator here is ready, and
I'm doing this right.
yeah, let me think here. Just advocating with your mayor and your congresspeople, but when did you start doing some of the advocacy? When you when you're so little, you're not going to do that.
Mhm.
But now that you're an adult, have you started more in earnest now that you're a little older?
This one that I'm compiling right now is
Mhm.
going to include a DVD.
Mm.
The DVD of me,
Mhm.
talking about the molestation. It's going to include my mom's certificates that she's acquired. She's gone through all these programs that while she's been in prison,
Right,
she's had all good time,
Uh-huh.
as they call it,
Mhm,
and just a very good role model.
Now, is there the option when we get a new governor that she can be released? Is that happen here?
I think the
as
time is
well?
now. I
Yeah.
think it really is
Right,
to try and
right.
test the waters.
Exactly. And just to never give up the cause. So,
All right, well, yeah, we're ready.
okay, we're gonna do 8 minutes, Paul, and give me my cue right here, so.
Okay.